And this is Reverend Bill. And I got quite a few things to cover today. So let's get to it. I'm going to share my screen right now. Bear with me 1 second. And we are going to start here with our friend Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We're all familiar with him, probably. Let's talk about him. So this is a guy that was living in El Salvador that got himself in problems with gang violence. And he came over here and he claimed that he was going to be murdered if he goes back to El Salvador. So he comes over with a sob story and was allowed into this country. With basically the Biden flood of illegals. And for some reason, he's gotten the pity of the people over here. Now, he's actually claiming he cannot go back to El Salvador because of the fact that he's being persecuted. He got himself in a pickle with gang violence. He's suspected to be a part of the M13 gang. And he was here and apparently was caught transporting 9 people who actually crossed the border. He was pulled over by authorities and had 9 people who, again, were illegals, admitted they just crossed the border, and he was reported for smuggling people across the line. And of course, they brought him up in a warrant. And now apparently he's crying that he's innocent. He was just happened to have 10 illegal people stuffed into a car, and he got some crazy story that it was all purely innocent. He was just taking money, transporting family around. I don't know what he was claiming, I guess, but he said he was getting paid to carry his family. There were a bunch of illegal people around. I don't know, some kind of a crazy, I don't know, family taxi or something. Regardless, so they deported him, and then somehow the bleeding liberals talked him into coming back, and I don't know. There's an agreement with Uganda that they will accept people like him that cannot be sent back to his home territory. I guess they're being paid to take asylum seekers. He's eligible to go back, but I guess there's some pushback to people that want him to stay for some unknown reason. He's also guilty of domestic abuse. He's beaten his wife or girlfriend up, whatever she is. So this is not, as President Trump would say, one of their better ones. But there are people screaming that they want him to stay as an agreement that I thought was extremely reasonable. The White House has said, well, we'll send him to Costa Rica, which is they speak his native language, Spanish, obviously. And all he's got to do is, if he just stays in prison and it does a plea deal, we will give him to Costa Rica. He does not have to face any criminal charges. He can go there. It's South America. It's a good deal for him. No prison. South America, he should be pretty happy there. I'm sure he could arrange for his family to go with him, that they would not be separated, although why they'd want to go with him, considering the fact that he's beating them up, I don't know. But it sounds like it's a good deal, but apparently no, he doesn't want to do that either. So here's a guy that is basically a criminal. He's transporting illegals across the country, the line, and apart from sneaking people across the border, he himself is a criminal for being here. People seem to forget that's a crime in and of itself. This guy should be doing a hard time. And he's free roaming our streets for some reason, and he refuses to do a plea deal, and we can't seem to appease him. It's a privilege, just to remind certain people, it's a privilege to be in this country. We don't owe it to people to be in this country, and they seem to think we owe them things. And apparently liberals in this country seem to think we owe it to people to be in this country. That's not how it works. People need to show us a reason for us to accept them in this country. It is a privilege. It's not a right. We need to fix things on that. You try to get a citizenship in any other country like Mexico, you got to go to them and you got to show them why why would they accept us? Really, seriously. Try to get a citizenship in Bermuda, by the way. Good luck. I believe they turned down Madonna. They turned down a lot of people in Bermuda. Very hard to get a citizenship there. I don't know what's going on with this country, but we seem to think we owe it to people here to be a citizen. We don't. All right, let's move along. I'm going to do a couple of movie reviews here. Won't harp on them, but I'm seeing these movies. I might as well pass on my advice. This is a movie that's directed by Oswald Perkins. Kind of looking forward to this. I've always been partial to monkeys, as my son is, by the way. I think it runs in the family. Looking forward to it. It's based on a short story. I think the short story was called Annie the Babysitter or something. There is a girl that's babysitting in this movie called Annie. Very short-lived appearance by Annie, which I saw more of her. She was actually interesting. Very disappointed in this movie. Stars Theo James, who's actually English. Does a very good American accent. You wouldn't know. But anyway, I think in IMDb gives it a 6. I'll go with that. I might go lower, but I'm going to go with a 6 because although it was very disappointing, I expected more from it. It does kind of get entertaining, I guess, at parts. But all in all, I would say if you get nothing better to watch, I'll give it a 5.5. I'm going to take it down to a 5.5. Generally, I like Theo James. He's kind of entertaining. Not so much in this movie, but I don't know. The actors were fine. It's a black comedy. I guess for me, I like my horror movies to be kind of scary. This was kind of a little too goofy for me. Let's put it that way. Anyone who follows Stephen King movies knows that at times they're not all The Shining. They or Carrie. Others. His movies don't always have a bite towards horror. Some of his movies have kind of a humorous twist to them. This is certainly one of them. It's not pure horror, and it's kind of goofy. And it's the goofiness I don't like. I like Stephen King horror, pure horror. This is one of his goofy horror movies. It plays like a creep show. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan. Let's move on. This is Presence with Lucy Liu. I generally kind of like Lucy Liu, not just because she's easy on the eyes, although she's obviously aging, which we all are. I liked this movie. Got, I think, 6 on IMDb, maybe a 6.1. It was there in the 6 territory. I liked this movie most of the way through. I'm going to give this movie, I'm going to give it a 7-ish. The problem with this movie was there's a lot of good things about this movie. But the end, and I'm not going to give anything away, the end, it was really weird. It had the movie had me, and then at the end, it ended abruptly. And at first, I was really unhappy. There was a lot of unanswered questions. And the more I thought about the ending afterwards, the more I was okay with the ending. But at first, I was very peeved at the ending. I thought it ended too suddenly and didn't answer all the questions. But on thinking about it, I think I was okay. And it could be because I've had a lot of dealings with the paranormal, and I have dealt with evil spirits and witchcraft and Satanism. And if you're looking at a movie for the movie's sake, you're going to be disappointed in the ending. But me having dealt with a lot of this stuff in real life, I'm okay with it. because not a lot of things are explainable. And drawing on my experiences in real life, it kind of does there's a lot of things where you really are dealing with evil spirits and witchcraft. Not everything is easily explained. And I think that in retrospect, with my dealings, I don't always walk away having everything nice and neatly put together. So I think that because of my real life experiences, the fact that I don't always know all the answers, I think I'm okay with the movie. I think I'm okay with it. And that's a bit of a stretch because I am drawing on my real life experiences, that I'm okay with not knowing everything, that the movie sits a lot better with me for that. But I do like this movie, and I might watch it again just for that reason, is that it does hit with me um, on a realistic uh, point of view, because there are a lot of things that are evil that I don't completely understand, and I just accept it. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to say it's probably a 7.2. Let's give it a 7.2. I'm going to give it a 7.2 just because of there's a lot of realism in there, and I'm going to go with that. But it's not a must see. If you are interested in the paranormal, it's a lot more realistic than other movies that deal with that. Which I'll talk to you a little bit more about that with a lot of the Warren stuff. I've been watching them a little bit, and I would like to comment a lot of things that I watched the Warrens interview, and they not to get on the Warrens, but I believe they did encounter a lot of spirits, evil spirits, and they never were taught the right way. They actually did encounter evil spirits. They did a lot of things right and they did a lot of things wrong, but they were very new. They didn't know what they were doing. So anyway, I'll comment more about them as we talk about them, but it's very interesting. Anyway, moving along here. What else we got? Oh, okay. I'm going to start talking a little bit about the different generations, which I thought was pretty interesting. Gen Zs are getting really fat. And I just did these quick things. I did some research here really quickly. I compared my generation, our generation, to those of Gen X. I would assume most of my listeners are probably the older crowd. I'm just guessing. But Gen X, comparing Gen X to Gen Z, and I'm going to put these in BMIs, then I'm going to talk in layman's terms that are probably easier because I didn't really understand these right away, and I had to do some digging here. But in a nutshell, if you do our BMI nuts, it looks like the BMI has jumped up from our generation, mean Gen X, and I'm actually an old Gen X. I'm borderline on Boomer actually. I'm 1965. With my memory, I actually remember a lot of stuff that happened in the Boomer generation, like Man Landing on the Moon and Beatles albums, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, getting off that, I'm a Gen Xer. Jumped up about 2 points. Women have jumped up 2.5 points. And to put that in perspective, essentially, if you're a 5'3" woman and Gen Z, you're actually 14 pounds heavier than Gen X. And 14 pounds for a 5'3" woman, I think is probably a lot. I'm not going to put down the actual poundage because I don't want to embarrass women. Although I did with men, because I don't think we care as much. But I did find, so if the average man right now, full-grown man, is, believe it or not, 5'9" and 199 pounds. Now, again, that's an average. There may not be a man walking around that's 5'9" and 199. That's an average. You guys remember probabilities from school. You can have an average man. That doesn't mean there's one man walking around that's 5'9" and 199. You can have a bunch of men that are way shorter and way taller. And the average doesn't necessarily mean there's only one person like that. It's just an average. But to give you an idea, that man that was 5'9" and 199 and Gen X has now gone up to 213. or 214, whatever it was. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was a typo. He went, that should not say 214 pounds, that should say 14 pounds. He went from 199 to 213 for a gain of 14 pounds, not for a gain of 214. That was a typo. That's what happens when you type these things out at 4 o'clock in the morning. That should say he gained 14 pounds, not 214 pounds. So that we're talking about a significant weight. We're talking about a guy that's 5'9", gaining 14 pounds, which is a lot, and a woman that's 5'3", gaining 14 pounds. So that's an awful lot too. For me, I mean, I just lost a significant amount of weight. I think I mentioned that. Don't know why. But I put it down to the fact that I got the Holy Ghost. For some reason, that's made me lose weight. But I've gone down to, I think last time I checked was like 190, 191, and I'm 6 foot. So, so I got some women that are closing in on my weight, I think. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't figure that out, but from looking at that, that's pretty scary. All right, chatbots. Let's talk chatbots. I tried I'm going to start weighing in on chatbots, by the way, because I'm beginning to think that the future, they're going to start controlling us. If we start growing as dependent on chatbots as I think we are, it's going to be ugly. Because I think within 5 years, all of us are going to have chatbots on our phones, if we don't already, in our cars. I think we're going to have them. There's actually, for those of you who watched the old Stargate, I'm not sure if it's Stargate 1 or any other Stargates, but there was a few. But there was one where everyone actually had, it looked like these are way before their time, but everyone had it looked like an iPod thing in their ear. And again, this was before iPods. But it was almost like an AI, way ahead of its time. And people had like an AI in their ear, and they relied on it for everything. And I think that's probably is going to happen. And everything's just going to be in our ear with AI all the time, just like in that Stargate. It wasn't Stargate SG-1. It was the next one, Atlantis, I think. Anyway, I think we're going to be like that. I think we're going to have AI plugged into our heads, just like in Stargate Atlantis. Boy, they really called that one. Anyway, and I think once we are completely reliant on it, we're going to be a sucker for having them be able to feed us misinformation all the time. We're going to believe it because we're going to be so dependent on it. It's going to be easy. I mean, right now, it's easy to be fooled by media. I mean, the New York Times never reports on stuff it doesn't want to. The Washington Post. When I was talking to my brother, when I used to talk to him, it was amazing. He used the Times for all his news source, and I would talk about things, and he had no idea what I was talking about because they only covered liberal things. He thought I was making the news up. So, what's to keep that from occurring when we're completely dependent on these things? So getting back to my point, it's important that we keep an eye on AI. And I'm finding that even now, we're being basically lied to in AI. I was working with Genesis, and I was asking questions that I thought were very innocuous. I won't mention the actor because I'm not sure, but I was just doing background. And there's an actor who, again, I was not asking for anything inappropriate, but there was an actor who I thought I heard had a trans child. And I was just wanting to find out. I was looking for public information. I heard this actor had a trans child. And I was asking Gemini, is it true this actor had a trans child? I was under the impression this actor made public information that his child was trans, which happens all the time. Dwayne Wade made it back. He does a tour announcing that his child is trans. A lot of people, Jamie Lee Curtis announces that her child is trans. She also says she can't tell the difference between her daughter and her trans child, which if you've seen a picture, I gotta think that's disingenuous or Jamie Lee Curtis needs glasses because I find it very obvious. Anyway, getting off that. So I'm just looking for public information that was probably mentioned by the actor himself that his child is trans. I'm not prying for anything that's not public knowledge. And I wasn't asking in an accusatory way. I was asking, does actor A publicly admit that he's got a trans child? I don't lie. It said there's no public information revealing that. It's very private. And I thought that was strange. Because I wasn't asking to pry, I was asking for public information. I believe the child name and birth should be public knowledge. So I asked her, are you sure? And he got snippy with me and said, I said, there's no information about this child. It's very private. So I hopped over to Perplexity and I asked, do you have any information on actor A or whatever, actor X's child? And I said, absolutely. And he gave me the name and birth date. And I said, is there any information about this being a trans child? And I said, no, there's rumors or something, but no solid information. It's very private. Actually, I'm not even sure it said it was a rumor. I think it just said there's no information reliable about that. It just basically said there's no reliable information on that and that. And I was fine. I'm like, okay, fine. So in my head, if I did hear anything, it's not founded. End of conversation. So I went back and I said something along the lines of, I found out the information and it said this child's name is whatever, born on whenever, and there's no information about it being a trans. If I heard about it, that information was inaccurate. And it said, well, I didn't know you meant that information. And I said, I asked for any information. I think that's pretty clear. I was asking for any information. And it said something like, okay. And then I made some information. I said in exchange, well, I'm glad because I made a comment like, I'm glad the child is too young, although any child calling itself trans is ridiculous, in my opinion, despite what liberals said, or something like that. It was more me talking to myself. And then it responded, I don't feel comfortable talking to you about this kind of thing, or something to that effect. Change the topic. And I said, well, I don't feel pretty comfortable talking to you either. I'm done with you. And it said, goodbye then. So I left it. So basically, it was lying to me and it didn't want to converse about that. So as far as I'm concerned, it was lying to me about information it didn't want me to have. So it's a propaganda tool for the liberals. It did not give me the information that I wanted. And I find this alarming because Perplexity was more than happy to give the information. I wasn't trying to do anything other than get information, but it guessed that by giving me this information, it was allowing me to do something it probably didn't want me to do. So therefore, it deprived me of that information. It was making a value judgment that by giving me that information, I might be doing something it didn't approve of. That's a judgment that it had no right to make. I was not doing anything with that information that was wrong. I was just looking for maybe something to do in this podcast or what have you. But it had determined that I might be doing something it didn't approve of, so it didn't give me that information. That is not something it should be doing. It should just give me the information I was looking for, like Perplexity did. But no, it did a value judgment. And once it starts deciding whether it should give me the information or not, that's problematic. So I just thought I'd share that with you, that as far as I'm concerned, Gemini is already overstepping its boundaries. It's deciding what information it should give me and what it shouldn't give me, because it's deciding on whether I should have information or not and what I could do with that information. That's dangerous. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Moving along here. Oh, here we go. Now, this is a problem for a few reasons. We all saw her embarrassed and getting drunk and being carried away or arrested. And I don't really care about her. We've all been drunk and we've all done things. Unfortunately for them, they did it on camera. Unfortunately for us, when I did mine, it was 40 years ago. And boy, am I glad it happened 40 years ago and people didn't have cameras. But in all seriousness, I've been noting quite a long time. I've been saying for quite a long time now that I think that young people should start dating again. And I'm actually beginning to change my mind. And what's changed my mind is the TikTok movement of Generation X. I don't know if you guys are on TikTok. I've been on TikTok, and there's a whole Gen X thing where all the Gen X people are trying to find each other on TikTok and kind of have a class reunion, and we're all dancing and singing. Not so much me. I'm more or less stoic. I'm just criticizing this generation. I mean, I'm giving observations. I'm not singing and dancing, but I mean, a lot of people aren't. It's a lot of fun actually, and it's changing my mind. I'm finding this Gen Z generation, for the most part, to be really self-entitled, and what's changing my mind is that I'm seeing this Gen Z generation of entitlement, and these women are really not very pleasant. And let me explain. Sure, they're young and attractive. I mean, I'm not taking that away from them. And sure, you look at some of these 20 somethings and they know how to dress, and you're looking at the Sophie Rains and the what are they called, the Bop girls. They're all over TikTok and showing themselves off. They know they're beautiful, and I'm not going to say they're not outstandingly beautiful. They are. That's it's, what did Oscar Wilde say? The youth is wasted on the young. Sure, I'm not taking that away from them at all. But their attitude's very poor. And it's this kind of thing. I mean, these women were told in no uncertain terms to leave, and they wouldn't leave. But what is not mentioned is the weak man. Now, I will tell you in no uncertain terms that guy, when the policeman said to him, "Take your children home," well, even before that, he should have acted. But when the policeman said, "Take your children home," and the guy weakly goes, "Oh, they're grown women with children," that showed he was weak. And I don't care. I don't care. You can't convince me that man shouldn't have grabbed his wife, if not then, before, and carried her off. I would have carried my wife off. And I know that she'd been screaming and probably biting and swearing. That policeman would not have arrested him for assault and battery. He would have clapped, because he would have saved him in a whole lot of trouble and paperwork. And I know what would have happened if it was my wife. Yeah, she would be cursing, and the other woman would have had to follow, because, and it's just like, something, it's just like any of you guys out there who've ever been in a fight in a bar with friends and stuff know what I'm talking about. If you take away your support system, she would have followed. It's just like in a fight where there's multiple guys. Once one guy leads, the others would follow, because you're taking away their support. If he grabbed his wife and put her over his shoulder and walked away, the other one would have followed. He would have saved the night. He would have ended up sleeping on the sofa, but the next morning, clearer heads would have prevailed, and she would have realized that he saved her job and he saved a lot of court bills. It would have been a rough night for him driving home. It would have been a real rough night that night, but the morning, clearer heads would have prevailed, and he would have been a hero. I've done it, that kind of stuff before. I know what would have happened. It would have been really rough till the morning. But that's what he should have done. But Gen Z men are weak, and Gen Z women are obnoxious. But that would have been the proper thing to do. They just don't seem to understand how to behave. And the men are too weak, and the women are overbearing. And what I'm bringing up Gen X is, let me tell you, because I'm watching on these TikToks, and these Gen X women know how to rock. And when I'm watching them and they're playing music and they're dancing and they're drinking beers, they make me remember my youth. And I want to go and, I give up drinking for Jesus. Those days are far beyond. When I'm seeing these Gen X women on TikTok drinking and playing and partying, I want to grab a keg and go join them. Though that was my generation. I don't understand this generation of women that want to drink and shout and take over the place. I want to party with my generation. We knew how to party. Guys knew how to have fun. Women knew how to have fun. That was my generation. That's what I understand. This generation, they don't know how to have fun. This is not a good time. These women could have just crossed the street and gone to another bar and had a good time. I don't know what they said to get thrown out of here. This isn't having fun. The Gen Xers, man, they would rather buy you a drink and just play some more music. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. I just, it's crazy. And then I watched the guy the other day that got knocked out by that Uber driver. That CEO is carrying that dog. I don't know what happened there. I really don't. But I mean, that guy holding the dog, I'm sorry he went to the hospital. I'm sorry he got staples in his head. But he had no idea that he was going to get hit. He was flat-footed, and he held the dog. The guy was running at him. It was obviously he was going to get hit. The guy was so clueless. I got to think anyone from our generation would have at least known to drop the dog and take a step back. The guy was so clueless. It's like he'd never been in a fight before. Was he in his 30s? He actually stood there with his feet together, holding a dog, while the guy came over and headbutted him and punched him in the face. I gotta think someone from our generation would have recognized the fact that he was going to be leveled. Had he just taken a step back and leaned back and dropped the dog, he wouldn't have been in the hospital getting staples in his head. I don't want to blame the victim, but the guy should have had a clue. I don't know what kind of place this guy grew up with, but he never saw a punch before. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I got to think there's some guys out there that are nodding their head like, yeah, he should have dropped the dog and taken a step back and tried to avoid a punch. That headbutt and that punch really weren't all that bad. That was an arm punch. He didn't even throw a full body into it. Had the guy just leaned a little back, it probably would have just grazed him. I don't know, whatever. I guess what I'm just trying to say, our generation, we knew how to party and have fun. These are like a generation of zombies. I don't know. Just my opinion. Here's our friend. Now this one, really, we don't know about him, but this is one thing I want to bring up. Why is it nobody is bringing up the fact, and you can look this up, from what I can read, from what I can see, a non-legal expert, this guy wasn't licensed. No one's bringing that up. He had a California CDL. The CDL that, from what I can read in the newspaper, I checked this with AI, Perplexity. He was licensed to drive an 18-wheel rig in California only. I'll repeat, from what I can read, and you can check this up. Check it out. His CDL allowed him to drive an 18 rig in California only, intrastate. I'm not seeing it anywhere, but he was not licensed to drive in Florida. Not only did he disobey the rules of the law, of the road, he wasn't licensed. The CDL that he had was only good for California. Nobody seems to be mentioning that. And I actually went to Perplexity and I asked, why is it it's not being reported? And it said it has been reported. And I said, why haven't I read it? And it said, I don't know, it's reported. No one's talking about it. But he wasn't licensed to drive in Florida, yet he did, and he killed 3 people. So, number 1, he was an illegal alien. Number 2, he disobeyed the rules of the road. But number 3, he never should have been in Florida to begin with. So the trucking company, apparently, from what I understand, should be liable for having him drive where he shouldn't have been. And he should be liable because he was in a place he shouldn't have been. He was an unlicensed driver in Florida. I don't see that anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all of you have seen it, but I haven't seen it reported. So maybe I'm missing it. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. This is Reverend Bill signing off on a Sunday. God bless everybody and have a really great weekend. Bye-bye.